What is global warming and how it could be dangerous? Global warming, the phenomenon of increasing average air temperatures near the surface of Earth over the past 1 to 2 centuries. A gradual increase in the overall temperature of the Earth's atmosphere attributed to the greenhouse effect caused by increased levels of carbon dioxide, CFCs, and other pollutants. Many climate scientists agree that massive societal, monetary, and ecological damage would result if the global common temperature rose by using more than 2 degrees Celsius (3.6 degrees Fahrenheit) in one of these brief times. Such harm could include extended extinction of many plant and animal species, shifts in styles of agriculture, and growing sea stages. Each year scientists learn more about the consequences of global warming, and each year we also gain new evidence of its devastating impact on people and the planet. As the warmth waves, droughts, and floods related to weather alternate turn out to be more common and greater extreme, groups suffer, and loss of life tolls rise. If we're unable to lessen our emissions, scientists believe that weather exchange may want to result in the deaths of more than 250,000 humans around the world every year and pressure 100 million human beings into poverty with the aid of 2030. In current years, China has taken the lead in worldwide warming pollutants, generating approximately 26% of all CO2 emissions. America is available in second. Despite making up just 4% of the world's population, our nation produces a sobering 13% of all international CO2 emissions, almost as a good deal as the Union and India, 1/3 and 4th vicinity, blended. And America continues to be primary, by way of a long way, in cumulative emissions over the last 150 years. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, in 2021, there were 20 weather and climate disaster events in the United States, including severe storms, floods, drought, and wildfires that individually caused at least $1 billion, about $3 per person in the U.S., in losses. Disasters in 2021 had a staggering total price tag of $145 billion, about $450 per person in the U.S., and that's an underestimate because it excludes health damages. These climate and weather disasters endanger people across the country throughout the entire year. In fact, more than 4 in 10 Americans live in a county that was struck by climate-related disasters in 2021. In this United Nations blog, there is some special awareness about the global warming that global warming can result in many serious alterations to the environment, eventually impacting human health. It can also cause a rise in sea level, leading to the loss of coastal land, a change in precipitation patterns, increased risks of droughts and floods, and threats to biodiversity. The effects are already evident in areas like Nunavut, Canada, where Inuit hunters are facing survival challenges due to the thinning of the ice. Explorer Will Steger gives an account of hunters in the Baffin Island, who are faced with the dilemma of unsafe hunting due to ice loss, risking their lives to get in contact with sea animals. Global warming can result in droughts that can worsen living conditions, particularly in Africa. The World Wild Fund has reported that climate change can drastically alter rainfall pattern and risk water and food supplies for millions. The IPCC report estimates that approximately 75 million to 250 million people in Africa will be without adequate water and will face food shortages by 2020, as crop productivity will decline by about 50%. Rising temperatures could also result in food shortages for 130 million people in Asia. People suffering from heart problems are more vulnerable to increased temperatures, especially those living in already warm areas, as their cardiovascular system must work harder to keep their body cool. Hot temperatures increase the ozone concentration, which can damage people's lung tissue and cause complications for asthma patients and those with lung diseases. Increased global warming can also pose a threat to national security, affecting food security, which, in turn, can lead to resource conflicts. At the UN Security Council debate on energy, security and climate, British Foreign Secretary Margaret Beckett introduced global warming as a security risk. Despite opposition from many council members, such as the Russian Federation and China, she argued that the loss of basic needs due to climate change in poor countries can increase the risk of conflicts. Similarly, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has labeled climate change as an act of aggression by the rich against the poor. On a positive note, many countries have now realized the grave consequences of global warming. The United States Supreme Court ordered the federal government to investigate regulating CO2 emissions. Protest participants in many American cities like Boston and New York have urged the government to reduce emissions up to 80% by 2050. However, the major impact on reducing the effects of global warming cannot be made without the commitment of those countries that account for the greatest production of greenhouse gases. This video explains the basics of the Paris Agreement, the international UN treaty of 2015 that aims to tackle climate change head-on. Its central aim is to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, with ambition to limit the increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Additionally, the agreement aims to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change. The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at COP21 in Paris on December 12, 2015 and entered into force on November 4, 2016. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius, compared to pre-industrial levels. To achieve this long-term temperature goal, countries aim to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to achieve a climate-neutral world by mid-century. The Paris Agreement is a landmark in the multilateral climate change process because, for the first time, a binding agreement brings all nations into a common cause to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt to its effects.
What is the Paris Agreement? The Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty.
Support strong conservation of 30% of our lands and 30% of our oceans by 2030. Make transformational changes to our current land use practices, including forestry and agricultural practices. Support a fair and just transition to a 100% clean energy future and away from dirty fossil fuels.
To limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Invest in building a clean energy economy, reducing emissions, creating green jobs, and modernizing America's infrastructure and public health system to withstand the worsening effects of climate change. Climate change is having a dire impact on almost every aspect of our lives, our economy, ecosystems, agriculture, energy, infrastructure, health, and more. If we are to build a better, cleaner, safer America, we must address the climate crisis. Climate change and ecology, the natural basis, very strongly affects the livelihoods of rural people in every country, and urban communities, especially animal husbandry, fisheries, and urban water resources, will face increasingly worse weather. Please heed this call to grow our clean energy economy, create jobs, end our reliance on dirty fossil fuels, and protect our lands and waters from the devastating effects of climate change. Our planet and our future depend on it. We need more concrete plans, more ambition from more countries and more businesses. We need all financial institutions, public and private, to choose the green economy once and for all. The priority should also be to support the better use of natural resources, stopping massive deforestation, as well as greener and more efficient agriculture. Adopting responsible consumption habits is essential, whether it is food, especially meat, clothing, cosmetics, or cleaning products. Finally, recycling is an absolute necessity for waste management. The World Alliance, in cooperation with independent experts and renowned institutions, proposes to evaluate the solutions of its members for free. The Solar Impulse Efficient Solutions brand will offer innovators a competitive advantage and those interested in quality assurance solutions. I hope so. I cleared everything, but if you have any questions, you can simply ask me in the comments section below.